What's going on, everyone? Lauren Sisler here with AL.com. Mike Rodak joining me now to discuss the Alabama loss in the SEC tournament second round. This post-game show brought to you by Andrews Sports Medicine, our good friends there, always hanging there with us. I know it's getting late. It's just a little after 10:15 here in Central Time. And the unfortunate news, Alabama out now after the second round, falling to Vanderbilt 82-76. And it was a game that Alabama looked like they pretty much had in the can throughout much of the first half, obviously into the second half, having a 15-point lead at one point, the largest lead throughout the game, and then falling short there, 82-76. So, Mike, just initial thoughts, what you saw, what really stood out to you about this Alabama basketball team that wasn't able to finish the job and, pull out the win to advance to the quarterfinals.
This was just a summary of the entire season in a 40-minute game. I mean, they had their very good moments in the first half when Jaden Shackelford started 6 of 12 from three. And, they built a 10-point lead pretty quickly that, as you mentioned, grew into 15 points early in the second half. And seemed like they're playing good defense. I mean, they held Vanderbilt to under 0.8 points per possession, which is a very good number in the first half. Scottie Pippen Jr., who's the leading scorer in the SEC, started 1 of 12, and they were playing good defense on him. And it seemed like this was a game where Alabama was kind of featuring all the things that they can do well. And then, just as has happened this season, they just flipped the switch from good to bad and bad to good. And in this case, it went from good to bad pretty quickly in the second half. And Vanderbilt went on a pretty good run. And one of the biggest factors was Alabama getting in foul trouble. Jaden Shackelford had 4 fouls early in the second half. Javon Quinterly picked up his 4th midway through the second half. And then their other guard, Keon Ellis, got his 4th with about 8 minutes to go. So that really adjusted their lineup or forced them into a different lineup than I think that they wanted to be in later in the game. And their shooting suffered, not directly as a result of that. I think overall their shooting just fell apart in the second half, but they had a stretch of 12 out of 13 misses on 3-pointers, which again is just something that's happened with this team. They've fallen off from a 3-point percentage shooting standpoint this entire season, and they hit one late. Darius Miles kind of hit one with a minute to go. It didn't really mean a whole lot in the context of the game, but turnovers were an issue. Their free throw shooting fell apart. It was their 4th worst free throw shooting game of the year at 60%. Overall, I think their 3-point shooting ended up around 21%, which is terrible. So just summed up a lot of the problems that they've had this season all in one game. And here we are.
Yeah, and I think obviously we previewed this game coming into it, and it was like, what basketball team are we going to get from Alabama? Who are we going to see? Kind of the Jekyll and Hyde that we've seen all season. And I think just kind of watching things disintegrate. I guess if there's one area to pinpoint, and you look at just how they were so dominant early. And again, you can point to some of the things that Vanderbilt wasn't doing well. And you point to Pippen Jr., obviously not having a great outing there, especially in the first half, missing a lot of his shots. But then, being able to just come back. You saw there at the end of the game, he gets the turnover, he takes it in, obviously scores. And then Alabama able to come right back with Miles shooting the 3 and making it still a game, bringing Alabama back within 4. But again, clock is winding down and Alabama just couldn't get the job done. I guess when you just kind of look at the overall overarching theme from this basketball team, I mean, where do you think some of the biggest issues lie, and that Alabama not able to put things away and carry that momentum from the first half to the second half and continue with the Vanderbilt team that we again, only lost by 2 to Alabama in the regular season. So this is not a bad Vanderbilt team, but there is some disparity there, when you look at the overall strength of schedule for Alabama and everything they've kind of put in this season.
Yeah, it's definitely a better Vanderbilt team than the team that beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa a couple of years ago. That was probably a more embarrassing loss, quite frankly. This is a
Yeah.
decent Vanderbilt team. It's not great, but better than they have been. So that's an important piece of context. But it's an immature team. It's an immature Alabama team that, as we talked about on the afternoon show today, has lost. And this is going back a year now. I mean, it seems like it's old news, but they lost Herb Jones. They lost Alex Reese. They lost Jordan Bruner. They lost John Petty. They lost Josh Primo. And they just haven't been able to replace that. Maybe talent-wise, yes, they have, but just maturity-wise, leadership-wise, basketball IQ-wise, it's all been lacking. And it's been a theme the entire season. They haven't been able to find it. And I don't know if they're just magically going to find that when they play next week. And they will play next week, and we'll get into that. But, the issues with this team is it starts with defense. Their defense has fallen off considerably from last year, efficiency number wise. They were number 3 in the country in efficiency last year. They're down in the 70s now. And we saw that in the second half. Vanderbilt had a 1.3 points per possession in the second half. And I think they went from scoring, there was 25, 30 points late in the first half that Vandy had, and they ended up finishing with 82. Just kind of shows how much they kind of stretched the game open there. And then the other big problem was shooting. And Alabama had that stretch of not being able to shoot. And when you can't shoot and they're down around 300th in the country right now in 3-point percentage, then that's not going to allow you to kind of mask your mistakes on defense, which is what happened last year. There weren't perfect defensive games that the team had last year, but when they did have some issues, they were able to kind of shoot their way out of it and cover it up. And that's what didn't happen tonight. And that's why Vandy, which did shoot the ball better in the second half, especially from 3, that's why they won.
Yeah, so you talk about efficiency from a shooting standpoint. Defense, Brian McGuire here said instead of roll tide, we can say roller coaster Bama. So up and down like the weather. If you don't play defense the entire game, stuff like this will happen. I definitely sense some frustration from the fans over here talking about football season. Let's get back to football. But look, Alabama's not done yet. I guess just kind of looking ahead, where your thoughts are in terms of how they stack up, where they will land in the NCAA tournament, your expectation for potentially where they might be seated, and obviously a lot of things to fix, a lot of things to clean up, and that consistency factor that we talked about, and getting back to Alabama and playing good Alabama basketball. What is the continuation of the postseason look like for this Alabama team?
Yeah, you read Twitter tonight, people say, oh, they should not be making the NCAA tournament. They should be in the NIT. They lost to Georgia. They lost to Missouri. They lost to A&M. They lose now to Vandy. It's not true. I mean, they're going to be making the NCAA tournament. There's no doubt about that. It's just a matter right now of how far do they fall seeding-wise. And I don't know if they really fall from, this morning, the projection from ESPN's Joe Lunardi was a 6 seed, and he had them playing Rutgers as the 11 seed. That's probably where they're going to end up. Yeah, the New Jersey finest up there. And actually, he has that game projected to be in San Diego. So it could be, I don't know how many Rutgers and Alabama fans will be in San Diego, but that's projection right now. I don't think it's going to change a whole lot. I think if they had won this game and if they had maybe beaten Kentucky, they probably could have moved up a little bit as high as a 4 seed if they really made a run in this tournament. Maybe they fall to a 7 seed. That I think would be the floor for them, but I think the sweet spot is around a 6 seed. And, does it really matter at the end of the day, whether you're a 5 or a 6? You're probably playing a similar caliber of team that's a 10 or 11 seed. And for Alabama, it's just, if their players have been waiting to turn it on and waiting to care and waiting to play the way that they're capable of playing, then this is the time to do it. You only got 1 game left. That's guaranteed. And that game will either be next Thursday or next Friday. We're going to find out everything. The selection show will be Sunday night. And this is it. This is the last rodeo for this team. And as you mentioned, I don't think fans are, exactly throwing a party, a going away party, or maybe they are, just because it's a team that I think people are just really tired of watching at this point because of all the frustrating errors that they make. And it's not a good brand of basketball that they've been playing the last couple months. And, Alabama's going to be turning the page pretty soon, and it's going to be a much different team that comes in next year. 2 5-star prospects. They got Namari Burnett coming back from injury. It's going to be a different looking team next year, but this is the last chance for this team to kind of show what it's got.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but talking about just the way the team looks, when you look at this team, even just sort of the way they carry themselves, their demeanor, and you can see the frustration. You can see the frustration from Coach Oates for obvious reasons, and obviously the players as well. And just, kind of a little bit of that chippiness, but at the same time, just sort of that, I don't want to say it looks like they're, giving up, so to speak, but it's like you could just see that, they go on this run and then all of a sudden things just kind of evaporate. And then it's like, what is happening? Right. So I do think there is just this, external frustration, internal frustration, and just trying to figure it all out. So I really think, they got to go back to the drawing board, get things figured out for the NCAA tournament if they want to have a chance at advancing and not being one and done. And again, you come off a year like last year, you win the SEC championship, and then you have such a disappointing, kind of turnaround. And again, a different looking team as you outlined throughout this, broadcast. But oh, yeah, it definitely leaves you kind of scratching your head. So again, final score, Vanderbilt wins 82-76. Selection Sunday will be sort of our next opportunity to kind of break things down, see where things end up, shake out for Alabama in terms of the NCAA tournament. So we'll keep our eye out on that. Thank you guys for staying up with us tonight and watching. And we thank our sponsors, Andrews Sports Medicine. Everyone have a wonderful, safe night, a great weekend, and we'll catch up with you soon.